My name's Laura Wigglesworth, and I work with AI. It's an AI career platform. You're going to hear a lot more about it. And I am joined by the co-host, Joe O'Connor from Career Pivot. So I think he's getting some slides in order right now, but can everybody see Joe? Joe, can you say hi?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Super excited to be here.
I want you to know, in kicking this off, that I identify with here today. So I spent 20 years in global health and development recruiting for USAID contractors. And I not only lost my job with Doge, but I lost my industry. So I, too, am in the same position that many of you are in. I'm working right now pro bono for an AI career platform because I want to help like you and like myself. And some of you may recognize me from another career platform, but I switched to Callings because it is so user-friendly and has the most robust set of job lists directly from the career sites. And it means that when you click on a job, it's available, which if you use Indeed or LinkedIn or some of the other sites, a lot of times the jobs aren't even available anymore. But I want to thank a few people before we get started. Alex Shannon, Cecily Martin, Joe, Karen Unger, and Miriam Vadran. They all helped us put together this for you today, so I really appreciate them. I'll turn it over to Joe, and he's going to kick things off with a poll and a couple of comments.
Yeah. Before we get started, everybody, I do want to show, so we're going to be using the Q&A feature in Google Meet today, so I just kind of wanted to show you really quickly how you could access that. So in the bottom right corner of your screen, you see these 9 dots. You click that, and then you click the Q&A, and you go in here, you'd ask a question, you could post it anonymously, and then you'd hit post, and then it would come to us, and then so we can kind of get through, so questions don't get lost in the chat or anything. So I just want to start off with that. And now I want to kind of start off, we kind of already kind of talked about this in a little bit, right? Like, I know many of you answered the question, what are the strengths, of introverts? And a lot of you are hitting on some really key things, right? So I see, empathetic listening, I see observing, and, being introspective and not wanting to waste people's time, right? And I love this, and actually this is exactly what I wanted to talk about, right? And those kinds of like really key skills, right? Deep listening, empathy, curiosity, a focus on real connection and real results, and like not wanting to showboat are really key skills that are needed in industries and companies all over the world, right? These are things that hiring managers really need on their teams. And so I want to start off from like a place of empowerment and recognizing you guys, right? Like these are all amazing, really hardcore things that a lot of people can't do, right? It's most people, a lot of times if they're having a conversation, they're just waiting to hear for their time to talk. They're not actually listening for information. And, they're only curious to like maybe a surface level in many ways, right? So I want to just kind of start off and recognize, helping, kind of reiterate those strengths that you all come with, right? And I believe we have a poll that, I might be moving.
Chris will launch.
Yeah, Chris, if you want to go ahead and launch that. Yeah, so we're going to launch this poll real quick. What's your biggest networking challenge? So Chris is going to launch a poll on the chat. And, oh yeah, feel free to share your LinkedIn's. That'd be great, actually. Right, so, kind of the 4 biggest areas that we've seen, right, people struggling when it comes to networking is, identifying who they should be connecting with, right? Like, how am I supposed to figure out who's going to be able to help me in my job search, right? And then moving from that is, oh, I found somebody I think is really going to help me, but how can I make that connection? How can I make that approach? This can be kind of an awkward thing, whether it's in person at this conference or, over a coffee date or, a LinkedIn thing. Could also be that nobody's responding to your messages. Maybe it's, you're sending out lots of invitation requests, you're trying to connect with folks, and like they're just not getting any play there. And then of course, the last one on the stage is like, okay, great, now you've got the informational interview, like, oh crap, right? Like what am I going to do to prepare? You get in your head about it, you're trying to make it like perfect, and you put a lot of pressure on it. So those are some of the areas that we've seen, and it looks like a lot of folks in the poll, kind of agree. We've got 150 people that have already responded to this. A lot of people said, all of the above. All of these are, big challenges, right? I'm curious. I saw about 12 people put in, there's another challenge, right? So I'm curious. I'm just going to go through the chat a little bit and see.
We can publish the poll and move to the next slide.
Yeah, we can go ahead. I was just going to try and see, if anybody had. That's a great question. Is networking for just getting a job? I see that question, Erica, and we'll get to that in a minute. There's actually like kind of 4 reasons, 4 base reasons for why we would be networking. But let's go ahead and move forward for a little bit. So I'll go ahead and let Laura kind of talk about the 3 M's of networking.
So these days I can keep about 3 things in my head at once. I have 3 kids, and I would have 3 husbands, but I'm not that organized. So 3 M's of networking that I want to go through are mindset, how to get in the right frame of mind, method, how do you actually do it? How do you get the appointments if you're doing informational interviews, and what do you say when you run into people in casual conversation? And then the third is momentum. So how do you keep things moving forward? So let's talk a little bit about the mindset. If you can go to the next slide, Joe. Networking is essential, but it's not as hard as we think it is. So why is it essential? The number one reason it's essential is that most jobs are not advertised. So despite the plethora of technology and the feeling that it's become more and more and more scientific, most jobs are still filled through word of mouth and through referrals. 60 to 80% of jobs is what we continue to find when we research it, are jobs filled through informal networks, especially with the growth of fractional employment. So there's consultancies, there's temporary assignments, there's regular full-time jobs, there's part-time gigs. A lot of those are filled through word of mouth. And the second thing is referred candidates are hired more often. So they comprise only 2% of applicants, and yet almost more of the candidates who are hired come through referrals. Another reason is because networking builds advocates. So once you meet with somebody, they may advocate for you immediately, or in a week, or in a month, or even in a year. Once you build a relationship with somebody, they become your advocate when they hear about a job. And then the last reason is networking accelerates learning. So we learn in a variety of ways. We learn through the websites that we read, but the best way we learn is from other people. And so when you network, you can ask people, how does their organization differ from other organizations? How did they get where they are? Can you follow that same path? Do you want to take a slightly different path? So networking, through building relationships with people, we learn more, and it sticks with us longer. I want to also go through a couple other reasons people might not have mentioned about why it's hard. So Joe started us out by having people say, what is a strength you bring? It is hard to network, but we don't want to dwell on this. It's even harder for introverts. We're only going to spend a minute on this because of it. So go ahead and write in the chat, why is networking hard for introverts? And maybe, Joe, if you can start reading out what people write in.
Yeah. See a lot. It takes energy. It's hard to approach people. You can feel really one way. Maybe it's a lot of small talk.
Yeah.
Inauthentic. You don't even know what to say to break the ice.
Yeah.
Can be kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
Kind of fearing like, oh, you're getting rejected. Like, you don't want to bother people. Oh, I get that. Exactly.
Totally. So probably
extroverts run the workplace. So I do want to, we didn't say this at the beginning, and I do want to bring up one thing, right? So Laura and I aren't here to tell you that you need to be an extrovert. That's not the goal of this exercise, right? Actually, I did a little bit of research for the post I made like last week, and it's actually like 60% of people like lean introvert, either really hard or this is from like MBTI. They did a survey about that. But like those skills that we talked about at the beginning, right? That deep listening, the empathy, the curiosity, those kinds of things, like those will get you through this. You don't have to become like some rah, like high energy, I'm going to have 5 Red Bulls and talk to 100 people at this networking event kind of person. Then we're not trying to get you to do that.
Yeah. So just to review a couple things I've seen, dislike of small talk, definitely. Yes, we're not telling people they have to be what they're not. And social battery drain, I saw somebody use that term. That's a great term. It's draining. Social media saturation. It's hard to reach out, especially on LinkedIn when everybody's being bombarded and they may not respond. So we're going to talk about how do you get people to respond. And then the last thing that I've given a term to that a couple of people might have alluded to is what my husband and I call loser syndrome, which is feeling like you don't have any value, especially for someone like me who lost my whole industry. And I know that people outside the industry that can actually hire me might not get it, and they don't know what I've accomplished. So I want to spend a minute for all of us to remind ourselves what it is we have accomplished. One thing. And so I think on the next slide, Joe, we've posed the question, but just to remind us and put us in the right frame of mind, I want to hear what is one thing you're proud of having accomplished in your work. So go ahead and write that in the chat. And then while people are writing that, we can go to the next slide and start talking about the method of how do we actually do this? How do we network and build our network? Imposter syndrome. I want to hear about accomplishments now. So we're switching from the negative to the positive. In my case,
I also want to, sorry, yeah. Lauren, before we go to method, I do want to also talk about one thing that I think that makes it harder for introverts when it comes to networking. And I think for a lot of people see networking as like one thing, right? And whereas like having lunch with a colleague or like, you know, like I was literally at my friend's house last night. I was babysitting his kid. He came back, and then like we had some deep conversations over. I wish it was beer, but it was sparkling water about like his job search, and like that was networking. I've known this guy for 10 years. I'm babysitting his kid. We're friends, but like it doesn't have to just be I'm going to this formal thing. It can take a lot of different things, and once you kind of switch it from only being one thing, it allows you to be more flexible in your approach, right? I'll give you another example. Like my friend, the same friend actually, he's been out of work for 8 months now, and while financially they're doing okay, he's struggling to find a new job, and one thing he's been doing is volunteering at book fairs. He's running those scholastic book fairs that all American kids love, but he is getting out there, he's talking to different people, and like while it is not like formally trying to find a job, he's connecting with all sorts of folks. I mean, and like parents and like people that run the book fairs and stuff. And so like, anyway, I just want to say like it's not, we get stuck on like, oh, it has to be like one thing, and it's a whole lot of other things. But let's go ahead and I can move on to the next slide.
So what we want to spend most of our time on is the method. And we're going to break this into 2 parts, which is how do you actually prepare? How do you figure out who you're going, and how do you get an informational interview, for instance? What is it that you want to prepare to say? And then actually saying it. So what do you say during that informational interview? So I think you can go to the next slide, Joe. And over to you.
Yeah. So when we are talking about our job search, right, when we're talking about our careers, and I'm sure there's other ways to start too, but I think of 4 places that we start, right? So some people start with a role, right? Like I want to work as an instructional designer, right? And so I'm only looking at those kind of roles, like training and instructional design. I'm looking for specific organizations. I only want to work at Apple or at NVIDIA, right? Or, some other kind of place, right? It's very specific. Or I want to work with a specific person. Laura works with Garrett at Callings, and he literally said like he only applied to a certain job because Steve Jobs was there, right? Or some other like big, he wanted to be a part of, what that guy was building. And so sometimes you follow people, right? And it could be maybe this fourth one is you want to work on a specific challenge, right? Maybe it's, you really want to work on a, AIDS relief or solving, some big, AI issue or something, right? But like those are often the 4 drivers of our career. I am curious, like if there's some other ones in the that you guys can think of, if you want to put those in the chat. But I think these also inform how you start networking, right? And I'll show you on the next slide, kind of going through that. But if we know this about ourselves, like how we're trying to start things, then it'll help us be more aligned as we move forward. And I know this is maybe Laura's, I probably should have put this in a different order, and I apologize. But when we are thinking about making a connection, when we're trying to network with somebody, we're trying to build a relationship, we really want to be clear on ourselves, and when we're doing the groundwork with that person of what are we looking for, right? In many cases, right, it's that person is hiring. That person has a job on their team or in their company, and I want that, and my goal is to, connect with them either through a referral or for them to give me a referral or to like help me connect directly with this job. Another option is they know somebody, right? Maybe Laura knows somebody who works at a company that I really want to work at, and I want her to give me that warm introduction. That's the goal of my interaction with Laura, right? It could be mentoring, right? Like, hey, Laura, I'm younger in my career. As a recruiter, Laura's been a recruiter for 20 years, right? And, I'm looking for some kind of mentoring in this and learning, right? The other one could be information. I'm pivoting into a new industry, and I need to know more about it, right? And I'm curious, so it's like, you're trying to people who can help you build your skills and your knowledge in that, right? Again, there could be other ways, but I feel like in our conversations and in our research, like these are kind of the 4 main kind of reasons why people are, trying to build new relationships. And when you make that approach, and then we'll kind of talk about it in a minute, you want to make sure that you're kind of laying these groundwork, you're sticking with whatever the ground rules are, right? So if I'm approaching Laura and I say, hey, Laura, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z, and I know that you know Barry, and Barry is has done certain things, and I'd love you to connect me with him. That's kind of like our ground rules, right? But if I suddenly turn to Laura and say, actually, Laura, I know you work at Callings and they have a job, and I want to do that. I want that job. Then you're kind of betraying the kind of rules of the game that we put together, and it's going to throw Laura off, and it's going to feel weird to you, right? So just kind of thinking about that, but I'll go ahead. Laura, go ahead. I know we've got to keep moving.
Yeah, so can everybody see my screen?
Yep, we should be able to see it.
Okay. All right, so what I'm showing you right now, I'm going to show you 4 different sites for how do you identify who it is you want to talk to and how do you prepare. So the first one is Happenstance. And for those of you who haven't used it before, Happenstance is sort of what LinkedIn should be. It's all your relationships that your people that you're connected to through, you've written to them on Gmail, you maybe have been on them with Twitter, or you've been friends with them on Facebook, or they've been in your LinkedIn group. So you give Happenstance permission to access your contacts. It's not accessing the content of what you've written to people in Gmail. Once you decide who you're comfortable giving it access to, then it becomes your sort of your virtual Rolodex. And I know I'm dating myself with that reference, but you can also connect to other people and become friends with them through Happenstance and get access to their network. So it's a bigger universe than LinkedIn is. And it also responds to plain English. So if you're trying to build your network and figure out who you should talk to, I pretended that I want a job in healthcare, and I came from an NGO in the global health arena that, is shedding jobs right and left. So I put in here, and if you can see, I'm looking to connect with former colleagues. Can you help me find people who have worked for, and these are the organizations that I've worked for, PATH, JPIGO, JSI, CARE, or FHI 360. But they now work in healthcare. And here's what it gave me. So it gave me all of these people. You can see Wayne came up as first, so I'll be calling him. Gave me somebody who's an independent consultant who previously worked at PATH, a couple other people here. And you can see this person previously worked at CARE and at JPIGO and is now at a public health consulting firm, right? So this is one way to expand your network. So when you reach out to them, you say to Bridget, I know you and I work together at FHI 360. Now I see that you work at Viadel Healthcare, and I'm looking to learn more. Can I schedule a call with you for 15 minutes to pick your brain and learn more about your industry? So the fact that you have that FHI 360 in common will increase the odds that she'll respond to you. Second thing I wanted to show you is Reddit. Show of hands, are most people on Reddit already? Reddit is like a huge, well, actually, I think Google takes all material from Reddit. But on Reddit, you can search for communities. So in my case, I said, okay, I work in, I came from talent acquisition. What kinds of communities are there for me that I can join? And this one came up on recruiting tools. People are anonymous on Reddit, but you can still start conversations this way. So I scanned through some of these, and I saw that a couple of people had some interesting comments here. And then you can, if you want to ask an engineer, this person had an interesting thing to say, you can reply to him on Reddit, but you can also connect with him directly. Let's see. You can comment on what he had to say, and then for people, you can get access to them and start a conversation that way. Then you can take it offline.
Yeah, Laura, do you mind if I jump in here too? Just for
Go for it.
Yeah, so I will say, so for me, when I was younger in my career, and Reddit's always been my favorite website, but when I was younger in my career, I had a very hard time like networking in person. I felt really intimidated by it. I had a hard time, and I was dealing with a lot of stuff. But I found that getting involved in professional conversations on Reddit was much easier because it was anonymous, because I could lurk in the back and just read a bunch of stuff. And then eventually over time, I got more confident about putting myself out there and maybe leading some of the discussions. But for example, like I'm an instructional designer, and there's an instructional design Reddit, and there's a whole bunch of people talking about, industry tools, different things like that. And then there's a Discord related to it where that's a live chat. I talk with people every day, and people will actually if I wanted to share my portfolio, but people put up consulting gigs and stuff on there, and are very willing to give referrals and things. And so there are other communities that you could plug into based off of your skill set and your background that might be a little more just a way to approach it than just sticking on LinkedIn.
Cool.
But go ahead, Laura. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to show you another way to find people through the Callings platform. So everybody who is on this call today is going to get a link at the end to sign up for Callings, and we'll also have a follow-up tutorial on Friday for those who want to spend a little bit more time combing through all the features. But when you go to Callings and you're in your job tracker, this is my job tracker I'm showing you for real. One of the jobs that I'm interested in is at a health technology company called Ambience Healthcare. And if I click on the job and I go under the tab that says network, it's going to give me people that are connected to that job. And here's what's even more amazing than all the people it gives me. It doesn't just give me their LinkedIn connection, right? Everybody, like I said, is saturated when it comes to LinkedIn. It gives me their email address. So here's Amber's email address. And oh, by the way, I don't have to use this if I don't want to, this draft email. I can also look and see what else might I have in common with Amber, right? Something that I can refer to when I write to her. And then it gives you really interesting stuff about the company that you might want to bring up in your custom outreach, right? So that's just another place to go for people. Then the last thing I want to highlight is how to find events. So I know this is a webinar for introverts. Again, events don't have to make you in the room. A lot of events are small and more intimate, and a lot are online nowadays. And I think Eventbrite is one of the best places to go for free events. So I studied Russian in college. I won't say when, but I also taught English in Russia a long time ago. And so I was toying for a while with the idea of using that again, rekindling my Russian and somehow using it in my work. So I just did a search last night on Eventbrite to see, okay, somebody who's interested in Russia who lives in Washington, D.C., what kind of events might I go to? And I came up with this one at the Free Peoples of Russia House, the Condition and Future of Russian Studies, the Russian Intelligence Service in the Struggle for World Domination, and a fireside chat at the Bloomberg Center at Johns Hopkins, the new campus. So all of these are free. A lot of things come up that cost money, but you can also click the free button right there. Okay? So those are, I hope those are helpful. Another thing I wanted to mention is that it's worthwhile to comment on people's LinkedIn posts. So I was talking to Wayne about this a couple days ago when we were preparing for this, because he said that he saw somewhere that only 1 or 2% of people actually comment and post on LinkedIn. So if that's true, then the weight of your comments, it goes a lot farther. So I started looking at, this is one person who came up on my search for this company called Hippocratic AI, another AI health company. And so I opened up her profile, I read a little bit about her, and then I started following her. And I saw this note here about how they just got all this money and they're going to be hiring Series C funding, right? And I paged down and I see, oh, a lot of people reacted to this and gave her the thumbs up, but only one commented, right? So I'm going to comment on this because she'll not only get a notification that I commented, but she'll probably reply to what I say because only one other person has commented. So it's surprising to me, but worth mentioning again that take some time to follow people on LinkedIn and then comment on the kinds of things that they're posting.
I wanted to go into the Q&A because just a little bit because we've had some questions and I want to make sure that we get to those. So I'm going to just go in there. So I think we're kind of covering that, like when making a career pivot, how do you find people to network with, right? I think, we got a lot of ideas of some different platforms you could try out, some ways you could kind of analyze your network through happenstance and through callings, lots of different events, things like that. So I'm going to say maybe we've answered that, but if there's other ideas people have in the chat, we can happy to go there. We can always come back to this too, right? We're going to cover some more of this stuff. We have about 30 minutes left, and I wanted to make sure we got some of these questions through. So this is a great question. I love this, and I'm actually going to take a little bit of time on this one. So it says, I think this was the same person. So it says, related to the previous question about career pivots, how do I present myself when my previous experience doesn't necessarily match up with the new field I'm pursuing, right? And I know a lot of people are doing this, right? Like, and for me, I think there's a couple ways to go about it. One, and I've actually used this with a client, is so going back to the happenstance tool. I have a client. She's worked in comms for like 5 years, and she's had a meteoric rise in the last 5 years. She's actually up for positions where she's like senior comms person, right? But her like non-traditional background is kind of getting in the way of her getting those jobs because the decision makers aren't comfortable with someone who has like a non-traditional background. And so what I actually did with her was I went through happenstance and I had it find people that were in senior comms positions who had non-traditional backgrounds like her so that she could connect with them to help her understand how to tell her story, how to position herself, how to make those connections for with folks who've walked a similar path. A lot of this is storytelling, right? If your story doesn't make sense on your resume to the hiring manager, you're not going to get the job. You're not going to get connected. And the reason why is because, and like I know my story, you each know your stories, but the goal is for the resume is to make yourself the protagonist in the hiring manager's story.
Yeah.
And that takes a different shift, right? And so you have to, it can be very powerful. One of the ways to really understand that is understanding their story, and the way to get that is through, some of this networking and information. So that was that question.
So minutes, Joe. I think I should go through a couple other things, and maybe we could.
Yeah, we'll come back to the rest of the Q&A in just a few minutes.
We are going to give Garrett 20 minutes to go through the Callings platform, but I want to highlight one feature. Joe mentioned knowing your elevator pitch, and there's this tool in My Insights on Callings in the left toolbar. You'll fill out a questionnaire, and you'll attach your resume. It will give you a suggested 20-second elevator pitch. So knowing this can give you confidence when you go into your meetings too. The last thing I wanted to mention for the preparation or for the background is consider strategic volunteerism. You don't have to volunteer for a long time. It can be time limited and task specific. So here's an example of a conference that I wanted to go to. It was SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management. The price tag was $3,000. I wrote to the CEO, sent this email, said I was referred by somebody that I had talked to. Can I come to this conference, and I'll volunteer at the conference? And he wrote me back and said, absolutely, I'll waive your registration fee. So I went to this conference a couple of weeks ago in Louisville and got to network with people from all over the country who are chief human resources officers. So that's just an example. Okay, we are running out of time. I've got 2 more minutes. We haven't really talked that much about what to say in the informational interview, so I'm gonna just go over a couple of things. So I'd say 3 things. Again, I can keep 3 things in my mind at one time. So one is start with what brought you to that person. So maybe it was an article you read that they wrote. I recently contacted somebody who wrote a book on AI that was not all doom and gloom, and there were a couple of particular things in there he said that I thought were really poignant. So I started our meeting with, I'm glad you wrote that book, it's not all gloom and doom. And there's 2 things that you talked about that I was hoping we could spend a couple minutes on. So that's how I use the time in the informational interview. You can get the person talking. We both worked for FHI 360. How is it different moving into a for-profit like you're in now? Once people start talking, then you're building that relationship. And then the last thing is, be sure to ask for advice and contacts. People love to give advice, and they love to name drop. So in an informational interview, you're giving. So I have used up all our time, and I know there's a lot we didn't get to, but I'm going to give the floor now to Garrett, because he's going to spend a little bit of time walking us through Callings. And then, like I said, at the end, everybody's going to get a link, and we can have a follow-up. So
yes, but I also do want to get back to the Q&A just before we switch over, since it's more relevant.
And you can
hold on just a second.
Down the presentation.
Yeah. So somebody asked this in the chat, and the question is, is it okay to ask for a referral from someone you don't know well? All right. So that was a great question. A lot of people ask that, and I've seen it happen in real life, right? I actually, and I think the answer is yes. I've done it, and I've had people ask me for referrals all the time. The companies I worked for in the past gave very sizable referral bonuses, so I was trying to get as many people as possible in because I wanted some extra money. I usually offered to split it, but I think it also depends on referrals are a big thing. We could have a whole hour-long discussion about our referrals and how they're used and which industries and how different companies use them. But I think it's okay, right? I don't think I wouldn't, if someone just right off the bat asked me a referral, I would say no. But if we had a 15, 20-minute conversation, I realized yeah, you're really good at, what you do and you're an expert and things like that, I would feel comfortable. But that's just me, right? There's a question here about Collins, so I'll leave that for that part. There's a couple in there. So here's one. Okay, how to network and show value after a long career break. I've lost a lot of confidence with all the rejection emails. I get that, right? Like that is, that's a tough spot, right? I know, like there are lots of people in that position, especially, I mean, there's lots of people that have been out of work for at least 8+ months now, but there's plenty that have been out for much longer. And, I think it's a very tough thing to wrestle with. And I'd love, if anyone has any advice to put in the chat about this. I haven't actually ever had, I'm going to be very honest, my longest jobless stint was probably 3 or 4 months, so I don't have that long career break to kind of talk through. I do think that there are ways you can position yourself. So again, like it's the story, right? It's the story that you're trying to be the protagonist in the hiring manager's mind. And if there are things that you did during that break that help translate that, to them, right? Maybe you took some classes, maybe you, I love this other question. There's a lot of questions I could spend here all day. But I think a lot of times when you have a long career break, and I'm going to shut up in just a minute, but it is networking that's going to get you the ability to really kind of tell that story, but also to connect folks that understand it and will help you, right? I know plenty of people that have had long career breaks and are trying to get into anything, right? I know a friend, she's just trying to get an administrative assistant job at a doctor's office, right? She could do that. She has a PhD. She's been like a counselor for a really long time. She did all this work with USAID, but she's just like, I just need to make some money and I can fill out Excel sheets and do this stuff. But she's not going to get that job by just applying for it because her story doesn't make any sense. One, like she's going to need to actually probably know somebody at that doctor's office, maybe even the doctor themselves, to give her a chance. Because just applying out of the blue, they're going to say, wow, this person's really overqualified. I don't understand why they're applying. No. And just go to the next person. Yep, I'll kind of shut up. Go ahead, Lauren.
Joe, can you take down the presentation and unmute Garrett? So thank you, everybody. We're going to continue to answer questions in the chat. But and by the way, people are doing an excellent job networking considering that they're all introverts. So nice job in the chat. I'm going to give you the last 15 minutes to talk through callings. We are going to give you a free account. So that'll be posted in the chat. And then we're going to have a follow-up for those interested on Friday where we'll spend a little bit more time going through some of the tools in Callings. So I showed this before. This is your job tracker. This is the way Callings organizes your jobs for you. And you can put a lot of jobs in there. You're going to, once you sign up for an account and you add your resume, it's going to start matching you with jobs and sending them towards you. And you decide if that's a good job or not quite a good job. So you don't have to add them to your tracker if you don't want to. But if they look like a job you might want, you just hit the button and you hit add them to tracker, and they go on your tracker here. You can also add your own jobs if you want. There's a way that, I don't know if Garrett can show this now, but there's a button at the top that says add jobs manually. And if you click that, then you can add jobs that it sends you, or you can add your own jobs that you find by pasting in the URL. And then if you go back to the tracker, we can show you that you can use this sheet to manage all of the aspects of your search. So I showed you before how you can figure out who you're connected to or who's connected to the job for your network. You can also get background information about the company, and you can use it. You can use this from this. You can use this to hone your resume, draft a cover letter, and apply for the jobs, as well as prepare for the interview. But before we click on a particular job, I also want to show you how this tool helps you manage where you're at, so it organizes your time. And you can see at the top it says table or Kanban, so you can view it in 2 different ways. Right now, Garrett's on table, but he clicked Kanban, and it switches the order and shows you how you can drag jobs from I started them to now I'm in the interview phase, right? So some people are more linear. They want to read from top down. Other people like organizing this way. Okay, maybe we can go back to the job tracker to the table view. And we'll spend a couple of minutes showing you the kinds of features that are part of this table. So right now, Garrett's got a whole bunch of jobs listed, and he can show you by clicking on any of those particular jobs. Okay, different aspects. So here's background about the job description, and we're going to go through the job fit. It'll analyze him for the job, so if you can click on that tab. It gives us background about the job and Garrett's strengths and weaknesses for the job. I noticed that he pages through that very quickly because he doesn't want you to read about his strengths and weaknesses. But it does give you a lot of background information. And he can also click on Company Report. That tab will show you background about the company. So this is information about Sage Group. If he scrolls down, it'll also give who are some of the competitors. So this can help you discover new companies. And then how have they used? So this Sage Group that Garrett might be interested in applying to, here's some articles that have been written about them that have been scraped on the internet. He might want to bring these up in an informational interview. Or it might help him figure out who does he want to get to know, because he can click on the articles and see who wrote them, for instance. So if you go back, okay, back up to the top. So if he goes under prepare, so now he's ready, he wants to apply for this job, it comes up with, he put his resume in when he created his account, comes up with a resume based on the job, right? If he clicks on click to edit with AI, it's going to show you places that changes that it recommends. And what I love about this feature, well, first of all, I just love that it's so user-friendly and easy to read, but I also like how it gives you reasons and it lets you reject the changes if you don't want to make them. So you can see in green, it said, here's what it recommends that Garrett phrase here, and here's what it recommends he says. You can click keep original and it won't make that change. And then he can go to the next paragraph and see, okay, the summary's fine, but now he wants to accept some things and reject other things as far as the suggestions go, right? And then if you can go back to the previous tab, we can show another feature. Oh, he's also prompting me to say, you can also edit your own resume with your own words. So the nice thing about this tool is user-friendly, very easy to read, and these are all suggestions. AI is not there to do it for you. AI is there as your assistant to recommend ways to do it. So you can accept, reject, or add in your own comments. And then you can save it and download it to apply. You can also see that it does the same thing for a cover letter, but let's skip that, just show people a quick glimpse. Okay, I like the cover letters that it recommends because they're short. And most people aren't going to read long cover letters at this point. But I did want to show you that, okay, so now you're back at the custom outreach. It's showing you, I mentioned this before, who's connected to the job that you might want to reach out to, and some information you might have in common, and ways to contact them. I showed you before how you can click on the reach out, and it will give you both their LinkedIn. This is mind-blowing because no other career platform has this. It has tracked down the person's email address. So I mentioned before that LinkedIn is saturated. So better to use email or some other way. You click use email and it gives you a suggested email as well as an email address. There's also a box in the left corner that Garrett's at. You can type in questions or ways to improve this email. For instance, please create this in French, and it'll change the whole thing to French. I can't really see it, so my screen is so tiny, but he's writing something in there. Yeah, translate this into French. And it's got a live connected to generative AI. Some people have asked me, who gets this information? Nobody else gets it. We don't sell it. So, and the generative AI sites that it comes from don't keep it. Anyway, wanted to show you that you can All right, we're back in the main tab, and if Garrett goes under interview, you're going to see here that when you get the interview, it's going to give you a pep talk, which some of the other career platforms that you might have seen give you. But then if you scroll down, it's going to put itself in the role of a hiring manager or, you know, a peer to this person or the head of the department and say, what is that person probably going to focus on in your interview? What are they going to ask? And then if you scroll down a little more, you'll even see recommendations for how to prepare and questions that you might get asked to be prepared to answer.
Hey,
right?
Laura,
Yeah.
I just want to stop for a second. There's a bunch of questions in the chat about Collins. And I know a little bit about it, but I thought maybe you might be able to answer some of these.
Okay, let me see if I can look while we're going through this demo, but yeah.
And I will say, again, like there is going to be a full session on Friday. Laura is going to send you all the information about that, where you're going to go more in depth on this, right? It'll be like a full demo.
So I think Garrett and I can answer the questions in the chat. I was going to say through writing, but I don't have access to answering the questions in the chat, so I don't have that control. I'll scroll over to those in a second, but there's a couple other things on this platform that we wanted to show you. We've only got 5 more minutes. So if you click on My Ideal Job, okay, now we're in My Insights. This is what I wanted to show you guys. I showed you the 20-second elevator pitch, but there's a whole lot more that this system can glean about you and help you, clarify your marketable skills, what it is you're interested in, what kinds of industry you might want to focus on, how to sell yourself. Lots of these kinds of things are in this tab called My Insights. So after you go through this questionnaire, can you click on that one, Garrett, where it says My Questionnaire? It's going to take some time for you to fill this out, but once you do, you click Generate, and it's going to create a long report about you. It'll keep it in the system, but you can also download it. And in it, you're going to see these tabs here that Garrett's hovering over. My Goals. So what does the system, based on what you told it, perceive as most important to you? Is it money? Is it the industry? In this case for Garrett, it's the role and responsibilities. And then if you scroll up again, after you see the goals, it also gives you, this is so cool. It gives him an ideal job description. So sometimes people say to me, wait a minute, that's not the job I want. And I say to them, this is based on feedback that you gave it, as well as your resume. So you might want to change your resume if you want a different kind of job. But when I ran this for myself, it told me that my ideal job was Global Director of Talent Acquisition for a global health innovation company. And it said, you're going to be responsible for honing the process, motivating, guiding the team, training the hiring managers, and developing the employer brand. And I read this and said, oh my God, this is the perfect job. Where do I apply for this? Because I thought it was an ad. It's not an ad. It's what the system thinks is your ideal job based on what you told it. And then the last part is, if you go under My Brand Elements, you're going to see in here, I showed you this before, a part of it, your elevator pitch. So 20 seconds, what is it you're looking for? 2 minutes if you have a chance to talk to somebody. A summary about you, some headlines. What is it that makes you unique? And then your marketable skills, I think, are below that. Again, you can edit this. So if you click to edit, you can change it. You can take things out before you download it. But it's something nice to keep on your desktop and maybe even to print a copy so that when you go to events or go to interviews, you're reminded of what you're good at and what's important to you. Okay, I think that's most of what we wanted to show you. There's also a coaching element. So we have webinars like this one and the Calling Circle, which is communal support for everybody who's a part of Callings. And then, so here's some examples. So that's the Calling Circle that you can join. And coaching is mostly in the form of these kinds of webinars that we do. We tend to do 2 a month. We hope to increase that to 4 pretty soon. So if we can write in the chat, Garrett, I'm going to put the Life After Doge link in there. Everybody on this call today can get a free account to try out the features of Callings and to join the Calling Circle and future webinars. And I'm also going to have a follow-up call on Friday for people who want to spend a little bit more time doing this. One of the things we're going to do is fill out the My Insights questionnaire, all of us at the same time, and generate a report. So this is sort of forcing people to work time on the same platform at the same time together. So I pretty much used up all of our time. Joe, I don't know if you have any parting words, but I'm really sorry we didn't get to hear from Garrett because he knows much more than me.
Yeah, I don't know why Google Meet hates Garrett. Sorry, Garrett. But appreciate you. I think, Laura, you did a pretty good job of going over it. It seemed pretty impressed. Yeah, I know things are hard and shitty out there. I agree with that, but you don't need to try and transform yourself into an extrovert. You've got plenty of really hardcore skills that you can bring to the table. It's really just kind of figuring out, those kind of approaches and the tools and how to leverage your networks, right? And I would also say, I imagine Laura will be sending an email kind of to everyone with more information about, kind of what we covered and some of the tools and references we gave later this week. So we'll be in touch.
lifeafterdoge.com is a place to go where there'll be a button where you can click for a free account to try out Callings. But we'll send a follow-up email as well. Thank you, everybody.